All right, yes, perfect. So, first of all, welcome to the Psychology Week, where we are going to take a different approach than your usual psychology approach. What I mean by that is that we are going to talk about, first video is of course about simplifying, like you saw in the title. Then after that, we are going to take a psychology approach where we take a psychology approach from a technical analysis standpoint. So we are going to improve our psychology through understanding technical analysis, which personally I've never seen the approach before. So it's sort of like we add on to the revolution that we have already been starting right here, which is truly beautiful because I think there is a big and a major reason why people fail in their psychology and why they can't keep their psychology in check in the trading industry. That is because of their technical analysis. So usually the people that make the most money, and from the stock exchange as well in Amsterdam, where I've been a couple of times, from the prop firm payouts, etc., everyone that you see around the world that makes the most money from trading, they usually have a stupidly simple trading plan. It's very easy, and usually it's something with support and resistance, even EMAs, something like indicators, quite easy and simple to understand. And I think there's a reason for that, why these people are so successful with what they do. And I also think that we can outperform them because we have started a revolution, like I mentioned. And I think we can do even better if we understand certain principles. So why is that? Well, I have come up with a beautiful analogy again, like I always love to do. So this analogy is where we will go over why it is that these people succeed right there more so than SMC traders. Well, right here, the analogy is, if you want to make it easy to stick to your diet, then remove all your temptations in your house that could lead you to cheat on your diet. For example, and I think that analogy already makes sense, but for example, I want to stick to a healthy diet and I don't want to have any chocolate. Then if I have chocolate cookies in my house, don't you think that one night I will have the temptation right there to get a chocolate cookie from the kitchen and then eat it? Of course I will. Of course that temptation will be there. So that requires a lot of self-control actually to then not grab that cookie and to not eat it because it's there. It's so close. That temptation is too strong. In other words, the environment you are operating in right there makes it very difficult for you to actually stick to your diet. So what does that look like in trading? Well, if you want it to be easy to keep your psychology in check, when I say keep your psychology in check, means that you're not messing up, you don't have emotional errors. So if you want it to be easy to keep your psychology in check, then remove all things that will give you the temptation to make an emotional error. In other words, leave out every temptation from your house to make it very easy to keep your psychology in check. What does that mean? What does that look like in our trading? Well, that looks like our trading plan. What we do during our trading. Things like that. Our technical analysis. Our approach to the market. That is what we're going to go over as well. So it's important to understand, first thing, is it's the environment. The environment makes it easy to stick to your psychology. Its first steps is the environment. And if the environment is already setting you up for failure, so if you already have cookies in your house, then it's going to be extremely difficult to actually stick to your diet. If you need to go to the store and you need to walk outside of your house to then get the cookies, you might just think like, never mind, I'll just eat the food I'll have in house. Perfect. So that makes it easy to stick to your diet. The environment makes it easy. The environment is beneficial to you. So in trading, and now let's forget the analogy, or not forget the analogy, let's now remove the analogy and only talk about trading. In trading, if I have a lot of concepts going for me, so I need to check power 3, quarterly shift, market maker model, I need to check this, that, I need to check the macro time, I need to check this, I need to check all these different PD rates, all these different concepts, then is my environment making it very easy to stick to my psychology? No. Why not? Well, with every step you take during a day, you remove brain points, as in you use up brain points. So that is what I like to refer to as, again, that focus, that energy that we have throughout the day. That is a certain amount of brain points that we have throughout the day. Those brain points allow us to be focused on a task, because of course it's very difficult to focus on a session and focus on very focused work where you need to have all your attention on that work for 10 hours a day, because that requires a lot of brain points. So after the first 2 hours, likely you've already spent most of your brain points. So with that understanding as well, if we need to first go over the technicals right there before we even get into our psychology, which the psychology is, again, if we look at this right there, psychology is constantly a part of our foundational levels as well. So with the bias, with our narrative, overall understanding our context is where we have a little bit of psychology. Entry pattern is where the most psychology comes into play as well. So where we truly want to keep that psychology in check. So before we arrive at the most difficult part in our psychology, if we've already used up all our brain points by going over the technicals, then how can we expect to have the focus and the energy to actually keep our psychology in check? If I first need to go over 1,000 concepts before I can actually arrive at the destination, which is the entry pattern, where I need to keep my psychology in check 100%, otherwise I might blow my account, then how can we expect that? That is not reasonable. So we view that from a brain point perspective, where you only have a certain amount of brain points throughout the day. So you don't want to waste those brain points before you actually get to psychology. And the psychology is at the 5th foundation level, and the 6th one mainly, which is entry pattern and risk management right there. In other words, we want to make the environment, again, very easy to set us up for being winners, to win, to be beneficial, not setting us up for failure. So the people, and that is why I said support and resistance traders, they usually don't have a very difficult time, as in they might still struggle with it here and there, but they don't have a really difficult time with their psychology, which is very interesting because SMC is filled with psychology issues, as in problems, where people usually always say, my psychology is not great. It just doesn't work right now. That is usually because the environment you are working in is setting you up for failure, meaning that you likely have a trading plan. You have 1,000 concepts in your mind. You have a lot of different things in your trading plan that you need to first focus on before you actually can use the brain points to focus on your psychology. So what does that look like, again, to fully be able to understand it? I'll explain it one more time here. Is that if you first need to get to a bias and you have all these different concepts, so all the fancy concepts you might see on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all these different things where people are trying to keep you hooked, and they don't just throw a trading plan at you. No, they just give you all these random concepts. Then these people right there, they don't understand that it doesn't help your psychology. It is actually the opposite. It is very detrimental to your psychology. Because the reason why you are struggling with your psychology is because your trading plan does not allow you to keep your psychology in check, because you're distracted by the chart. And with distracted by the chart, I mean that you're so into the chart, you're so focused on your technical analysis right there, which is of course also what we focus on, but that doesn't allow you to then have the brain points to focus on your psychology. So how do we fix that problem? We fix that by focusing psychology in this week from a technical analysis standpoint. So we're going over the details on what you should not do and what you should do to have that easy environment in your trading to allow you to focus on your psychology. That is very important, which the first step is simplifying. Now, simplifying, I also have a nice analogy. Of course, you know me. I have a nice analogy for simplifying and the reason why we simplify, why it is important, and what it means to simplify. So, as you may know, the richest people in the world, etc., they also, relatively seen, pay the lowest amount of tax. Why is that? And relatively seen, I mean percentage, of course. Why is that? That is because the richest people, they understand something. They understand the tax system, or they have people for them that understand the tax system. They understand the tax system so well that allows them to cheat the system, essentially, in a legal manner, for example. So that is, and why we use that as an analogy, is because simplifying is the same thing. It's the same as hacking a system. Hacking a system and cheating a system, like the tax system, is where you first need to understand it fully in order to be able to cheat the system. With simplifying, with our strategy overall, what we have done here, we can, of course, focus on just support and resistance and try to be support and resistance traders and focus on our psychology only. No, we want to have the best of both worlds, where our returns are very good overall because we have that perfect balance between our psychology and that trading technical analysis standpoint. So the simplifying right there is where we understand the market. We understand all the concepts and we are able to simplify them because we understand every single one of them. So all the concepts are incorporated into our trading plan. Like I mentioned in the house rules video all the way in the beginning as well, is that all the concepts are already incorporated into a trading plan right here because we understand the whole system. So we were able to cheat the system, basically. So we have simplified everything. That does not mean simplifying usually has the bad assumption that it's related to not understanding something, or you just simplify because you don't understand and it becomes less effective. Because we've been able to simplify and because we've been able to incorporate all the concepts, we have also now still made it more accurate. So it's still insanely accurate. It's not less effective. I would argue it's even more effective. And that is the reason, again, why we simplify. So simplifying right there means to combine certain rules into one single rule. Now, those certain rules, of course, it's not the purpose that we turn two rules into one long rule, basically making two rules still. But it is important to combine that into one simple rule. So for example, if you understand power 3, then you also understand where power 3 forms. Power 3 forms and where it's effective is from higher time for PD rays. All right, well, that's interesting. Well, then why not just focus on higher time for PD rays and PD rays in general, because that is where the power 3 forms. So then if we incorporate those higher time frame PD rays, and the PD rays in general doesn't even have to be a higher time frame, then we also understand power 3. And we also understand market maker models, because we have gone over market maker models in this mentorship. We have gone over quarterly shifts, quarterly theory, whatever you want to call it. We've gone over macro times, everything. But everything is already involved in the trading plan because we have cheated the system. We understand the system so extremely well that we can cheat the system. And that is our goal right there as well. So you can understand as well, the first house rule that we talk about is we don't incorporate any trading concept that is not a part of this mentorship. Why is that again? Because that messes up the whole system that we had. It's like we're trying to cheat the tax system right there, and you have an accountant that understands the tax system to the fullest, and then we want to be stubborn and we say, well, accountant, I don't know about you, but I'm going to incorporate this thing to avoid my tax, and all of a sudden you go to jail for it. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should have just listened right there. And that is equivalent to then understanding, all right, well, Arjo, I think, yeah, you're doing a great job with the simplifying part, but I'm going to incorporate those macro times. I'm going to incorporate the power 3, etc. Well, you just messed up the whole thing. Now you're likely not going to make any profits. And if you will, then it's going to be way more difficult, and it's going to be at the expense of extra brain points that you shouldn't even have to use in the first place. So again, that is very important to understand, of course, and that was the first house rule, and that is why we simplify and why is it so important. Because that importance right there leads me back to you making the environment. The environment becomes very easy for you to actually keep your psychology in check because you're not distracted by the chart. You know what where and when you want to see something in the chart, that allows you to focus your full brain points on your psychology as well. Which, if we think about it, someone that is great at technical analysis but is not great at psychology will not be profitable. Because sooner or later, they will blow an account, they will blow extra percentage on that account, etc. Might not even blow the account, they will just go into drawdown overall, right? So technical analysis means nothing without psychology. Psychology means a lot without technical analysis. Because the market is basically understanding as well mathematical equations. So it's understanding that you already have a 50% chance if you're wrong or right of the market going higher or lower. Perfect. Then we need to incorporate stop loss as well, of course. So eventually, if your psychology is strong enough, you can be profitable without having any understanding of technical analysis. You can't be profitable if you understand technical analysis and you're the best, quote unquote, best technical analyst in the world, but you simply can't handle your psychology. And I think we might all think of someone when we think of that, right? I think we can all think of a person who is great at technical analysis, but can't keep their psychology in check. Meaning that their hobby might be to figure out an algorithm, but can they actually make money off of the market? No, that's holding them back. Their psychology is holding them back because they cut themselves in the fingers because they don't see they're essentially self-sabotaging themselves again through their trading plan. So that is what we are trying to avoid right here. And that is why it is so extremely important to understand this first before we dive into the actual week. So we are making the environment very easy to actually focus on our psychology. That is what we want to do. So how can we do that again? Is by simplifying. Simplifying does not mean that we are going to be inaccurate, because we understand as well, and what I wanted to mention a little bit earlier is that we are more profitable in that way as well. Because our psychology is not only, and psychology is not only related to you being an entry and not messing up. It's also having an objective, fresh state of mind when you actually go into the chart. So when you go into the chart and you're looking for a biased narrative, if you have good psychology, then you understand, all right, this is either high probability or low probability. So it's all linked to the technical side as well. So it's extremely important overall because that allows you to have more profits because you see the higher probability price action. You do not mess up in your psychology. And that allows you also to have a higher win rate. So that psychology is basically leading you to have a higher profit margin and to have a higher win rate, which is very important, of course. That is our goal. That is our goal as traders right there. So the technical standpoint right there is important to feed our psychology. And the psychology right there is important to feed our bank account to actually make profit and to have that high win rate. That is the most crucial aspect about probably this whole mentorship right here, where the technicals are nice, but if you can't make your psychology work, then this is just not going to work. And that is also why the strategy is designed in a certain way. Where I could, if I wanted to, I could confuse you with a lot of concepts and I could go over all the concepts in the world, which doesn't benefit me and doesn't benefit you. Because the way I benefit myself, and that is very, very honestly said, is also if you succeed. Because if you succeed, I'm also a benefiter off of that. So when you succeed, and the way I can make you succeed is by doing this, by having these things right there. Otherwise, I would have just thrown 1,000 concepts at you and say, all right, yeah, figure it out. Do whatever you want and go ahead and try to figure it out. No, we want to help you succeed. So this is the best way to help you succeed right there. Because with you succeeding and to your benefit, it will also be to my benefit, to be very honest. So that is, of course, what we want to focus on right there. So we've gone over simplifying and what it means as well. We've gone over all the things you need to know right now about psychology right there. Then the last thing, of course, I want to say is there's a lot of unnecessary rules in trading. A lot. And that is why we have also simplified it. Which isn't that crazy because people just like to throw fancy concepts into the world. As you may notice, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter is filled with just concepts. Nobody tells you how you should approach certain things or how you should go about it, etc. That is why truly I believe we have started a revolution here. And that is why you are probably also part of the revolution. because truly we are in for a big shift in the trading industry, I believe, and we are a huge part of it. So because people do that and they throw fancy concepts into the world, then usually people can't seem to understand the concepts to a certain extent, or they understand the concepts, but they can't seem to make them harmonize with each other, to make them in balance, where it's a trading plan now. That is something more difficult, of course, which if we want to get to that stage, then also the simplifying helps, because that is basically understanding all concepts to get to that trading plan. So traders, when they come into the trading industry, you are already set up for failure. It is just, again, me being honest, you are set up for failure if you come into the trading industry. We all are. Because first you probably see the Lamborghini, sorry, and then you see the nice watches, then you see all the other stuff, the 10% risk trades where they make a crazy amount of money, etc. You don't know if it's real or not, and all those things is the first thing you see. So that's the first sort of layer you have to get through before you actually get to people that are being genuine with you. Then you have the SMC industry. Within the SMC industry, people are also not that genuine most of the time. And then you also have people that just don't, or maybe they want the best for you, but they're just not the best teachers. They're just, and I'm not saying I'm the best teacher, don't get me wrong, but they are just not really understanding on how we should actually approach trading, which also leads to it being detrimental overall. So that is very important, where you're essentially set up for failure. Where right now we're trying to turn that around, where if you've gotten through all those layers, then great job. You've finally made it. And if you did not go through all those layers, then consider yourself lucky. And consider yourself as well that you need to be very aware that don't go back to those stages, because you've already skipped those steps. So there's no reason to go back to those steps, because that would just take double your time, and eventually you'll come back to this as well. So that is very important to understand as well. Again, you're already doing a great job. We just need to understand these things here for our psychology, and this will be a huge and a major shift in your psychology as well, which I truly believe in, because you will not be distracted by the charts anymore. You have a clear state of mind, where of course you will sometimes still have some fear, which over time will also be gone. And how we go about that is also what we will touch on later on. But first we need to rule out everything that could make the environment very difficult for us to actually succeed in. If the environment is difficult to succeed, if we have a lot of chocolate cookies under our bed, somewhere hidden, because we are trying to stick to our diet, but we do have chocolate cookies somewhere, then we are already setting ourselves up for failure. So we first need to go about that. First need to understand the mindset before we actually dive into the psychology week. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, then of course, feel free to ask any questions you might have. And then later on, it will also make a lot more sense once we dive into the week. All right, this video doesn't have specific tasks in it. So what I would love for you to do, if you want to take any notes, if you want to take away any homework, then here, please feel free to just write down your understanding of what I just mentioned. First, try to write it down and see if you fully understand the first time around. Then after that, watch the video again and see if your notes are correct. So did we actually talk about that? Did we actually mention that, etc.? Maybe you missed a few things, etc. To fully ingrain that idea into your mind. That is what we want to do right there. Because then we go from understanding to believing. Once we are in the believing level, then beautiful things are ahead. All right, perfect. Thank you.